Welcome everyone. My name is Mikey Mhenna. I'm the Executive Director of Afikra. Thanks so much for joining. Today's talk is part of our conversation series. If you take any photos of today's talk and you want to post them, please tag us so that we can share them. And if you're not following us already, please check us out. I'm very, very pleased to introduce our special guest, Yazan Khalili. Yazan lives and works in and out of Palestine. He's an architect and visual artist. His work has been exhibited in several major exhibitions throughout the Arab world, Europe, and the US. He received a degree in architecture from Birzeit University in 2003 and 2010, received his MA from the Center for Research and Architecture at Goldsmith College, University of London. And in 2015, his MFA degree at Sandberg Institute in Amsterdam. He was one of the founding members of Zan Design Studio. He was a finalist in the A.M. Qattan Foundation's Young Artist Award in 2006. Currently, he is the co-chair of the photography department of the MFA program at Bard College in New York, a PhD at the Amsterdam School for Cultural Analysis at the University of Amsterdam, and a guest researcher at Rijks. Can you help me with that?
Rijks Academy.
What's the word?
Rijks Academy.
Rijks Academy.
Yes.
Great. In Amsterdam. Yazan, thank you so much for joining.
You are very welcome. Thank you for hosting me here. I'm really pleased.
So I guess a good question to start is kind of a biographical question. When did you start using the word artist to describe yourself? How early in your life did you actually use the word, I am an artist?
Yeah, after my parents were convinced that, okay, I'm going to be able to make a living out from it. Well, actually, to be honest, like I studied architecture, and art for me was part of my architectural practice. And it's an artwork that made me an artist rather than the other way around. So I produced this very early on, like in 2007, I think, this architectural proposal to paint refugee camps in Ramallah. Interested in the material of the camp, it's made of bricks, cement bricks, vis-a-vis the city, which is made of limestone. And I was interested in the fact that the bricks can be painted, and I was interested in the idea of like how do we represent catastrophe through the camp? What is the camp in contemporary politics? So I did that on I photoshopped a photograph of a camp, and it was considered some people saw it as an artwork, exhibited as an artwork, and then kind of began to think of the possibility of doing art, not to become an artist. To call yourself an artist, I think to call myself an artist took me a while, and it took me courage and kind of financial stability. For my parents, being an artist was a kind of a hobby, and I should continue with architecture. Actually, I did my MFA in architecture, but that all led me to become to think of myself as an artist. But also, I would say, to complicate the meaning of what is an artist. So the artist that I began with, the idea of the artist, the one who's producing artworks, it changed by time to become the one who's involved in architecture, in politics, in cultural structures, in thinking of modes of production. To call myself an artist now, it needs. That's why I refuse to call myself an artist only. So I always try to put architecture an artist, cultural producer? Because it's very hard to define also.
Well,
Where
this is
does
why I'm asking you, because I noticed the way you describe yourself. I feel like you're hedging almost,
yeah.
you know? And I kind of picked up on that. And I was wondering, I was like, why, why and when did you start feeling like you could call yourself a capital A artist? And what does that really even mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like it's, there are many things. Like I would, say it has also to do with the market, for instance. Like
Sure.
at some point in my practice, I began, like selling artworks. And to sell
Mm.
artworks, you need to be an artist. And here, artist is a kind of a cultural capital that you need to build in this kind of neoliberal economy of art. Meaning, like you need to build up this reputation of being an artist. It's not based on studying or on a certificate, but on kind of a network of connections, a network um, of cultural events that you become involved in as an artist, that builds up um, this kind of capital of being an artist, and therefore it's a kind of a balance between so many economical structures of applying for funds, of getting the grant, to producing, exhibiting, selling, being in a gallery, not being in a gallery. So there is all of these that I would say make this title as an artist begin to function, but at the same time, being critical of the whole economy of art now, I wouldn't use it alone. I wouldn't say I am an artist and full stop. It's a more complex, more interlaced practice that I try not to be an artist as alone.
So I have sort of a question about this, because when I hear you talking about your work, and you talk about medium a lot, and you talk about structures, and you talk about material. I would imagine that comes from the fact that you're an architect, right? As well, and you're trained using materials, and you're trained to sort of think about structure and stuff like that. Do you see that connection, or am I imagining that?
Yes, I would say I'm an architect in other means. In a way, architecture is a structure of thinking. It's a way that it's a kind of a discourse that one moves away from architecture as a kind of engineering. I work as an architect. I worked in Dubai as an architect for a year and a half, and I thought, okay, I can't stay this kind of architect, and my whole practice after that, after 2005, was how to move away from architecture while understanding it better, engaging with it better as well. So, for instance, I moved away from architecture, but then when I did my MFA, my MA, my master's degree, I did research architecture, and there was a big shift in what is architecture, from moving from it being a kind of a discipline to it becoming a kind of a discourse.
Okay, so walk me through that. What does a sort of research architecture master's even encompass, and why were you attracted to that degree?
Well, I think I still don't have a clear answer. What was it? But definitely, it was a 1 year. I went in there. I felt my brain was just like opened to its limits and thrown in the world. And I think it took me years to begin to understand, to practice what I learned there. as to begin to see kind of the structures of production, the means of production, the tools, to see architecture as a discourse, meaning that you think through structures, and you think through power. Actually, think through power structures. So you understand the relations, the connections. You begin to understand economy in relation to what you are doing. Critique as a practice rather than critique as a theory that you read, but actually how do you practice it? So it's not like you go into research architecture. Wasn't kind of like you go and you read these topics and you do an exam at the end. It was more like a think tank process.
Yeah.
That gave me kind of new ways of seeing, new ways of interpreting the world.
It's interesting, because to me, I would imagine that when you walk through any sort of man-made place, right, and architects are people who make structures, human-made structures, those structures, they display our priorities, they display our societal agendas, they display power structures, they tell us a lot about ourselves as they're just our built priorities, right?
To a certain extent. It depends on, especially in architecture, I would say it depends on who's putting the capital.
Exactly.
You know, like it's the priority of who has the right to architecture. All these huge, like at the end when you study architecture, especially in the BA degree, you are asked to design all these amazing buildings and to to imagine and to design and to play with whatever you want. But when you go to reality, you end up fulfilling the client's needs. I remember I worked in an office in Dubai, and the owner of the office would bring me a catalog and say, design this building, like just make it to fit the location with this budget. And of course, you understand that architecture is not this space of imagining only for the A-class architects, but it's also it's a place to fulfill the needs of the capital, the needs of the market, and also the needs of the regime, like, or the apparatus. Like these amazing architects were not designing and building things out of their pocket. They fulfilled the needs of some capital.
These broader movements, these broad capital structures,
exactly. And therefore, if one has a critique for that kind of economical structure, one will find it so hard to engage with architecture without these questions and without feeling that, okay, so how do I practice this critique? Okay, we understand. So there's a problem of economical structures where we live, but then how do we voice that through our practices? So
let's move. So 2007, you create this photo project where all of a sudden you're thrust into the quote unquote art world. Take us through the next subsequent years when you start approaching new projects. What is sort of driving you? What's inspiring you? How do you approach the projects? Is it sort of intellectually based and then you execute on that vision, or is it sort of technological based and you're interested in a specific technology or an aesthetic? What's your approach?
I think the project that I did and really began to open up my I'm not sure if there's an image of it here. It's called Landscape of Darkness, actually.
I don't think I have it. No.
Okay. So Landscape of Darkness, maybe some, if you look through my website, people can, it's there on the website. Landscape of Darkness was the beginning of me trying to break away from um, from photography practices in Palestine that are about representation. So like the background behind, like this idea of the beautiful sublime landscape, like the landscape that is produced through gazing and romanticizing this land and trying to engage with it in a kind of an aesthetical and romantic way.
Yeah, idyllic.
Idyllic. My project in the project Landscape of Darkness, it began with me beginning to notice the landscape at night. This you are traveling at night, and I began to notice, like, where are the light, where's the darkness, where is the how is this landscape being produced, being seen, being approached? Being Palestinian, and I'm talking about 2007, 2008, was a bit tricky. That I was in the age of 26, I think, 27 at that time. To be late at night outside of the city was also a dangerous time because of the checkpoints, because of the military occupation, which is still now, but maybe I got a bit older to be in that dangerous age of being a suspect all the time. And I began to notice that in the places where there is so much light, I'm more scared than where there is darkness, because what light represented and still represents in the Palestinian landscape is the Israeli occupation. It's the power of light to for them to claim their existence through having these massive settlements lit all the night.
Quite literally satellites. Yeah.
Totally, like a spaceship that's landed on the hills.
Yeah, it's like the tyranny of the light.
Exactly, like that kind of light that you see in the landscape, vis-a-vis I would say the more organic light that you see in Palestinian villages and whatever is left from the Palestinian landscape, where it's more dark, more organic in the sense that it goes into darkness through the night. So when people begin sleeping, the village also fades into darkness. The project is not there. So I began the project there, but then I was interested in the fact that the camera itself also makes the Palestinian village disappear. Because for what the camera does, it balances the light and reads the light depending on which light is stronger, and the lighter or the less lit place becomes underexposed. And then I began being interested in the technology itself, how the technology is at the end a representation of the political structure. So camera is not simply a machine, an objective machine of just looking and producing and depicting reality, but it is a product of a certain politics. And then you can read that also in how the film in our old cameras, the negative, how it is made to depict white faces, not to depict darker skins. And then you can begin reading that in how the facial recognition is made to depict or to recognize, again, white faces vis-a-vis, like less accurate when it's depicting darker skins or non-white male, at least. So from that time, I began being interested in the technology and its relation to politics. I'm not interested in technology as such. I'm not interested in making it work better. I'm not interested in making the facial recognition work. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
This is similar to the architecture stuff earlier, right? It's almost like you're deconstructing these ever-present structures that if you don't pay attention, you can one could be confused that they're natural, that they were always there, and that they're not human-made structures that have biases, that represent our priorities and represent our bigotry and represent all these other things. And so
and represents the power structure that is dominant at the time of their thinking and production. I wouldn't, I'm not that person that speaks about our as a human, as humans, no, like I'm always, I always question this idea of we the humans, no, like I think if we the humans, if we do exist as humans, as this collectivity, it's based on so many power relations, power structures. When we say we the humans are, for instance, making the nature, polluting the nature, I question who are we then, who is we in this case, so when thinking of the technology, we can also think of the power structure and kind of the apparatus that is producing it, what kind of economical structure, whether political, social structure, etc. So that you see it goes through my work. I'm a very slow artist, so I do sometimes a project in 2008 and it continues in 2019. But in that time, I'm working on another project or another connection, and I'm so much also. I jump, so suddenly I see something very interesting. I just like, oh wow, I'm gonna work there. I'm do something there.
I want to talk. Yeah, I want to talk briefly about this the project "Hiding Our Faces Like a Dancing Wind," because for me this is like the perfect example of the deconstruction that you do in your art, and the deconstruction of the hidden layers through which we see life, and saying, wait a second, hold on. Let's look at this layer. Let's actually pay attention to it. It's not as transparent as we think. It's filtering a lot of stuff. So can you just explain to people the idea behind this project, the way it was implemented, the reactions? I'm curious how the world sort of has taken it in.
Yeah. So Hiding Our Faces Like a Dancing Wind is it's actually 2015, the date. It is it's a screen recording. So it's let's say it's a screen inside a screen inside a screen. It was my first beginning to engage with this thinking of the screen as a landscape, the screen as a space where the image is alive and being produced. I'm calling it more like these screen aesthetics, where we live inside the image now. So like now, at this moment, we are in the image. And this is something that it became so natural, so normalized in our lives, that we engage with the image in such a way that we don't notice it anymore as an image. It's just
Yeah.
an extension of our visual space, our even vital space. We live in it. We practice our lives and communication, and we live through our with our community through this image. So with that project, I began to engage with this with this kind of the screen as a space where things happen, where I don't need to take a photograph. Um, um, the photograph is alive inside the apparatus itself. So there's it's a photography outside of the camera in a way. So in this work, what you see is me trying to capture make the facial recognition work on the face of my partner Lara here, and she's trying to kind of avoid it by this kind of performative act of hiding her face all the time. The project in itself I begin to kind of look at the trajectory of facial recognition from the kind of the colonial time of anthropological ethnographical practices of measuring the faces in the colonies of the indigenous, of the people, of the locals, by the European scientists. These kind of, like using science as a way to speak in this kind of objective, like in the name of science, we are measuring. We want to decide who is a human and who's not, who's a human worth of being enslaved or being free, etc. No, so this kind of using the science, this objectivity of technology, and then I begin to look at it. I'm sorry, I'm jumping here. When I go to these kind of ethnographical museums in Amsterdam or Paris, and then you go and see all these masks in the museums, and while I was trying to photograph them, suddenly the camera began to recognize them as faces.
This I love. I think this is
and my body, goosebumps, are these, suddenly these masks begin to come to life through this kind of technology, the facial recognition square begins to work, and it's recognized as a face. So I took this moment, began to connect it with the facial recognition technology as a moment that it's also trying to speak through the algorithm. Like it's just as if it's a scientific, technological, objective machine that it's just recognizing the face as it is, as if it doesn't have this history and it doesn't have this kind of background of what does it mean to recognize a face, and began connecting it to the idea of recognition. What does it mean to be recognized? Being Palestinian, I think our main political goal is to be recognized as a state, as a nation, as people who have right on their land. So at the same time, recognition in these machines is something that we are trying to avoid. So I was trying to work as what is the kind of recognition we are asking for.
So Yazan, this project is so multifaceted, no pun intended, right? So and it's one of those things where like you're going back to the anthropological past to understand quite literally like how many generations of people have been writing this algorithm, right? We can think that Apple's writing the algorithm, but no, they're actually standing on the shoulders of all these generations and all this
the history.
this history, this collective and cumulative history, right?
But the history is not
so
only
with
in
projects,
the fact.
yeah.
But I mean, the
No,
history
go ahead.
is the idea of measuring the face, that the face has these kind of features that through it you can get information.
Yeah.
This is what I'm interested in. It's not I'm not interested in the science itself or the
No, of course, yeah.
But in the idea, how this idea of through the face, through measuring faces, you can begin to identify the person. Now it's beyond. It's you can say this. What is this person's ethnicity? Where do they come from? How smart? How There's so many readings of the human through their face that begins with a certain historical, political moment that we need to question. It wasn't a happy moment for us, So, and now we are seeing this these kind of algorithms based on these kind of historical political practices coming back to life, very normalized and very under demand as well.
So I guess I want to talk about Radio Alhara, and then I want to get to the quick Q&A, and then I want to get to the questions in the chat. But before we move on, I want to ask you, a project like this is multifaceted, as I said. What sort of surprised you about the response? Because you're touching up again something that I think is really profound, and I think the elephant that you're trying to chew on takes a long time to chew through.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. Have your feelings about the project changed over time since it's been released? Have you learned new things?
Hiding our faces, right? Or Radio Alhara.
Hiding our faces, and I guess Medusa is kind of similar, but
yes. Yes, to be honest, it's been a very for me. Look, I don't know how to bring it in a. There's something about when you are an artist coming from outside from the hubs, like I'm coming from Palestine. I'm not a European, maybe artist based, not only based, but like American artists, coming from the centers of art. No, when you come from these edges, the way you're always put in these kind of pigeonholes, like Palestinian, Palestine, oppression, speak about this, speak about that. And it took me a while to begin to produce a kind of critique of that kind of character of that kind of pigeonhole that I'm put in, and a critique, and at the same time to produce a kind of a practice that goes outside from being speaking about the identity as being Palestinian, but at the same time using Palestine as a collective experience to speak about, to understand what is apparatuses of oppression, what is how do we understand the world through Palestine. So that's why when I say I'm an artist who lives in and out of Palestine, I'm not using it only as a geographical thing, but also as a conceptual thing. So Palestine in my works, even when I'm speaking about the algorithms, it's always in the background. Palestine is a way for me to understand how these structures work, and how to critique them, and how to produce a certain critique also of these structures. So
I think you should change that sentence to, I'm living in, out, and through Palestine.
Definitely through Palestine. It's Palestine is something that I cannot avoid. So I always say it's a matter of not avoiding and refusing to bring in Palestine in my work and my thinking, but it's how to fail to represent it in a way that I'm expected always to present it in. this kind of failure, kind of a conscious failure, is a failure of that allows, I would say, a productive, more progressive way to bring in politics through Palestine.
Because you don't think, because you think the intentional failure to represent allows you to avoid the reductive process of having to represent a very three-dimensional, complex thing through a paragraph from one perspective. Is that the idea?
Kind of. It's, failure to represent means that you engage with the issue of representation.
Yeah.
So you don't say, "Oh no, Palestine, I'm not gonna engage with it." No, I'm gonna engage with it.
Yeah.
But failure here is a matter of how not to keep on reproducing the same kind of narrative, the same kind of image. But at the same time, you are recognizing it. You are working with it. So Landscape of Darkness is one of these projects where, like what you are looking at is an image of Palestine. It's a true landscape, but you don't see anything in it. Because what you don't see here is the space that cannot be represented. So what does it mean to look at a non-representation, for instance? So because the darkness in photography, usually it's a failure in the way in the cameras technically, not because you can push the camera, you can put another film, you can do so many things to have details, but then this kind of darkness, this dark spots in the image are the failed image making. So what is this failure? How do we understand this failure? How do we politicize it? How do we work with it? How do we see kind of a hope coming through it rather than end or
it's like the idea that like any photo you take is something is focused, something in the photo, in the frame is in focus. Maybe it's not the thing that you're typically used to looking at, but something in that frame is in focus.
Yes, but it's not like I'm gonna show you the happy. I'm not gonna show you the catastrophe of Palestine by showing you the beauty of the wedding. It's not like it's not a binary. It's how to be able to engage with these kind of same image, same kind of narrative, but from a more critical to both the Palestinian way of looking at it and what the world is expecting from you. There's another, I don't know, like I think in one of I saw in one of the projects which is called On Love and Other Landscapes. I think it's in the previous slide.
I want to cut you off soon because I want to move on to all these images and projects are on Yazan's website. So please check them out. And if we have time at the end, we'll come. So I'm curious about, I know there's multiple people involved in Radio Alhara, but since you're here, I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about the sort of genesis of the project and what the world's reaction has been.
I wish the community is here. It's been the nicest project one can engage with, actually.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's easy to a certain extent, but it's like full of energy all the time. Like it's not something that you produce it and then you sit aside and think of it. But no, it's happening every day. There's a discussion every day happening on WhatsApp or by email or by calling each other. As you know, today it's 7 months old, the radio. It really, like just on the day of the lockdown in Palestine, I think, or the second day, we had a chat, me and Yusuf, Anastas and Elias, and we said, let's do a radio. and it's based on a radio in Beirut, Radio Alhara, which we heard about it a few days before, and we thought let's do one as well, and we just did it. زي ما بقولوا بالعربي دبتك العافية يعني. It's like we just really jumped. We had no plans. We didn't know for how long it will last, like a week, 2 weeks. If the lockdown ended sooner, maybe we wouldn't have continued anything. But now it's the snow has accumulated. You know.
It's a beautiful thing. I mean, we're biased as afikra because we are very honored to be on the platform with you.
We are also happy to have you.
Love the work you're doing. Okay, so we're going to go into the quick Q&A and then open it up to everyone. I'm going to try to cut you off as fast as possible. So we'll do these as very, very quick ones. So what are you reading or watching right now?
Oh, me. I'm reading a very Althusser, actually. I don't know. I'm reading it because of the PhD. So I'm reading Althusser, beginning to read Althusser. And hopefully I managed to go through his writings. Yeah.
Who would you love to shadow for a day, past or present?
That's a tough question. Well, but he passed away. I would have loved to spend one day with Hussein Barghouti, the late Palestinian poet, philosopher, thinker. For sure, I would have learned a lot and in one day with him.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What do people most misunderstand about your work?
That it is about that it is only about speaking how bad the situation is in Palestine. I think that's something that I don't want. I think immediately when they see Palestinian artists, that's what people jump to conclusion, like so like you are poor art, Palestine, like yes, but let's not go beyond that, but let's work beyond that together.
So do you think people see the humor in your work?
Some people do.
Okay. Because I see it, I find it to be very humorous. I see humor like laced throughout it.
Yeah. Yes. Some works are really, I think, are very much like, yes, they're about this kind of joke in them.
Like I can see you smiling while you're putting it together.
Yes. Yeah, I although sometimes like I tend to be serious, but there's sometimes like this this kind of what's called like black being black humor, like it's there's a small joke
for sure
in the work.
I see it. Okay, the last one, and then we'll go to Nicholas for his question. Whose work do you admire or are inspired by?
Many. I have to say so many that it's very hard to say one person.
Okay.
But
try to pick one.
No, I would. I am inspired by collectives. Like I look, like for instance, Mansion in Beirut inspired me a lot. And it's inspired me by actually really how they made, a group in Mansion made Radio Alhara, and it immediately inspired me.
This is Ibrahim.
I think it was Majd Shihabi.
Okay.
That that establish it with others. But in general, like I really appreciate these kind of inspirations that make you feel you can do things.
Yeah.
It's and Radio Alhara really inspired me in that sense, and the whole collective, us in Radio Alhara.
That's okay. Great. So we have 3 questions so far: Nicholas, Fatima, and Lamia. Nicholas, if you want to unmute yourself, and if I can ask you to only ask one of your questions for now, and then if we have time, we'll come back to another one.
Yeah, for sure. That totally makes sense. Hey, Yazan, thank you so much for the presentation. Super cool. If I'm gonna have to pick one of these, I'll probably ask, so I have an architectural background as well, and I've moved away from architecture, and I'm a game developer now. And so I know there's this like dichotomy between this like very expressive, emotional side of artistic expression that maybe doesn't exist necessarily in architecture. And then in architecture, you have this like real cerebral response to necessities and criteria like budget and site and blah, blah, blah. Not that those don't exist in art, but not quite in the same way. I'm curious for you as a creative person, what places do these different kind of creative outlets, what places do they sit in your mind, and how do you kind of consolidate the difference between the two of these in your work?
Yeah, and if I understood well, and I can answer you, I think the problems of art, once one gets engaged in it, the economy of art becomes the same problems of economy of architecture. You know, like again, you have the market that has demands that requires things, and then you cannot do this kind of keep on doing this kind of critique in the practice, or critique actually also there's a problem with it, that it becomes a commodity in one way or another. But what, for instance, and this I would say a kind of a connection between art and architecture, Radio Alhara. Radio Alhara is for sure a kind of a structure that is able to produce what art for me is there to produce knowledge, to produce community, to produce kind of enjoyment, to produce all of that. At the same time, it's about constructing a structure where the community can engage with, can work with, can become part of it. And I think these kind of structures, I see them as a kind of an affirmative critique of both, of architecture and art, through the critique of the economy of both. Radio Alhara is it's very low on economy, it's on financials, but it creates a huge economy around it. So it's not an economy of it's not a monetary economy, but it's an economy of ecosystems that are working and connecting together in many ways. And you can see it from the collective, like in the collective, the 5 of us who are running the radio, how this collective is functioning and working, and opening up these spaces to the community, and with and through the community, and with the community, and in and out, you know, like all of these.
Great.
Thanks a bunch. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicholas. Fatima?
Sure. Hi, Yazan. Thank you so much for sharing your artwork and yourself with us. My question to you is, I'd like to know, what is your personal definition of art and of being an artist, however you want to answer that?
I can answer it in 1,000 ways, depending on the situation, to be honest. I don't have a definition, one definition of art. And I think art changes, and even my practice, and it changes as I do it and as I engage with it. so I can't define it really. It's not like I don't try and I fail. No, I tried and I failed to all the time to define it. And in my practice, whenever I feel like, okay, this is who I am, I always, end up failing. So it's a kind of continuous change in. It's a reflection. I don't know. Actually, I don't know how to define art and myself as an artist in it. That's why I put all of these together. So one time there was actually I put an artist, visual artist, architect, curator, writer. I put all of these. I had them once in my bio because I don't know how to define myself.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. We have time for one last question from Lamia. Thanks, Fatima.
Hi, Yazan. My question is, you sort of answered it a bit. It was about collectivity and how it plays into your practice, and how it's been to collectively practice the production of Radio Alhara. I guess I'll extend the question a bit to ask, what do you think is so important about collectivity now, and what is drawing you to collectivity now more than ever?
Yeah. Thank you. So Radio Alhara is not the first time I'm working with this. I also was part of Zen Studio. I'm part of Beit Anise. I'm part of I was the مركز خليل السكاكيني الثقافي, خليل السكاكيني Cultural Center. I was the chairperson and then became the director. Anyway, like this question of collectivity has been accumulating slowly in my in the practice and in the way I am the way I'm trying to see my role as in this society. So in a way, if I'm having a critique to this economy that we are in now, this very individual based, like the individual success, the individual responsibility to be successful and to be able to live and work, I take this critique and I say, okay, no, I accept the individual, but the individual is part and functions through this kind of collectives. The collectives of the society, the collectives in the community, the collectives around me, how to establish new ones, and at the same time, how to infiltrate existing ones. So collectivity, it's a way of thinking. It's a discourse in one way, and it's also a political view of how we can be engaged in our societies. I don't want to be, someone who is just living as an individual in the structure of the state or the community, but I want to engage with it. And engaging with it, is about making these kind of networks, establishing them, acknowledging them, and working with them and through them. So collectivity is a kind of it's a structure of engaging in politics, or engaging politically, let's say, not politics in the sense of like do elections or not, but it's a politically engaged way to be part of the society.
Great. Thanks, Lamia. Okay, well, thank you so much to Yazan. Yazan, thanks so much for joining, and thanks everyone for your great questions.
Bye bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yazan.
Thank you.
This was really, really fun. Thanks so much.
Thank you.